Hi everyone, thanks for watching. I'm Simon from Homesite. This is my second part of my Node-RED masterclasses. Now, last time, part 1, we covered a change state, the call service, the change, the debug, time range, delay and inject. There's a lot to take in. We built a very simple sequence within one of the flows. This time we're going to be covering a few more nodes as well as looking in more depth at the flow variables, which are really handy. Now this time we're going to be looking at the current state, the switch, comments, link in and out, and a wait node. We're going to be building a really cool flow which you could probably use at home. So let's get started. Let's go. So if you haven't caught part 1 yet, that's okay. We did cover some basics, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this flow that we created in part 1 in the description as well, so that if you wanted to start from there, you absolutely could. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to take our PIR, which we have here. We have a PIR on. We did a set to sunrise check, so that and then it turned a light on if it was the sun had already set. We did a change message just to indicate what that did, and we put some debug nodes in as well, just to have a play with those. Once the PIR went off, we had a 5-second delay, and then before we turned that light off. Now we did all that. That one and that one were what I would call my boot room lights. So what we're going to do this time, look at these nodes here. So we've got change state, switch, comments, link in, link out, and a wait node. So if you want to go back and check out that first video and recreate this yourself, I'm going to put a link at the top. Failing that, let's push on. So starting with an empty canvas, if you did want to import it, click on the hamburger menu, click import, paste in the flow that I've given you, press import, and then you can just place it on the canvas anywhere you like. Now then, so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to add in an extra light. So I've got some outside lights configured here. So I'm going to copy this light on here and paste it. Now if that comes down to here, I'm going to change this one to boot room light on. And I'm going to change this one to outside light on. Now if I look up here, I can choose my my outside. If I just type in outside, there we go, pops up. Fantastic. So that's that one. I'm going to get rid of this change message because that's not really doing anything. That's just an example from the last one. So now we should be turning this on light, this boot room light on, and the outside light on. I also want to turn it off, except in this time I want to have my outside lights stay on for a bit longer. So I'm going to change that to a 5-minute delay. And then I'm going to change this one to outside light. I'm going to type in there outside, select from the list, and that one I'm just going to rename. Now incidentally, if you did want to add in multiple entities into the same call service node, you absolutely could. You simply put a comma and then you can choose the next one. So we could then choose, if I come down to my switches, I want to turn on the snug lamp. But I don't want to do that because I want different timers. So I'm going to keep one entity in each node for the moment. So now if I press done, I'm also going to put my inject node in here to make sure that that works. So in theory, if I come to my overview, you can see there's some lights on in the kitchen already where my partner is, and this is my boot room up here, so I can turn that light on and off, and this is my outside lights out here, which actually run all the way along the back and all the way down the side. So if I press inject there, I should see that that light has come on and that light has come on, which they have. I'm just going to turn those off manually for now. Good. So at the moment with this flow, there's something I'm not very happy with. Now I'm going to zoom in a little just so you can see a bit better. Now the PIR turns off after 5 seconds. Now that's in my configuration.yaml. Now that's saying that it's not detecting motion. Now that's going to start the delay for turning these lights off, but I don't really want that. What I want is to move these over here a bit more, just for neatness. I'm going to delete these links here, and I'm going to drag it off of here. So I'm saying that actually when the sun sets, and the PIR is triggered, I want it to turn the lights on, but actually I then want to start my timers from here rather than setting them from here. And you'll see why in a minute. Now, the other thing that's annoying me about this flow is that if someone was outside or sat on the decking enjoying the garden and the sun had set, we don't really want the lights turning off on them. So we need to do something else. Now, I said we're going to use a current state node, so that's where we're going to put it. So I'm going to pop it here. I'm going to take my outside light, connect that up into here, move these along, and drag this one down here, remove that wire. So I'm going to kick it off from the current state node. So let's just talk about that a minute. I'm just going to stick my boot room down here, and I'm going to do something similar with that in a moment. So I want to be, after the PIR has triggered, we know that the sun is set, so it's night time. Now I want to look at my current state. So I'm going to call this OS state. I want to find my outside light. And I want to say, if this is on already, then I don't need to turn it on. And I don't want to turn it off. So I'm going to say, if this is off, then carry on running the flow. So I've got these little points now. So if the state is off, so that is true, we're going to turn the light on, and we're going to kick off the delay for turning that off in 5 minutes. Now I'm going to move that up there, and I'm going to do the same with my boot room. Great, so that's done. I'm going to hit deploy. So let's try that out, make sure it works. Now, I'm not going to sit around and wait for the 5 minutes, but I can just about wait for 5 seconds. So I'm going to hit this inject node now, and so what it should do, it should check that the sun is set, which it has quite a long time ago, and it's going to check the state of the outside light and the boot room light. If the light is off at the moment, it's going to turn it on and start the delay for 5 minutes. If the boot room is off at the moment, it's going to turn it on and start a 5-second delay. So if I'm quick enough, I should be able to hit this and jump here. Now this boot room light here should turn off in a second. And look, it's worked. So the other thing we can look at is this little delay box here. It's got a little blue box underneath it, and that shows that that 5 minutes is running. Now if you did do a deploy, I would stop that from running, or there's a couple of other ways, but it's going to turn that light off in 5 minutes. Now I'm just going to turn it off now. So that's good, that looks like it's working. So how else can we refine it? I think we can make it a bit cooler, yeah? Now I love Home Assistant, I love Node Red, I love the automations, I think they're all brilliant. However, I live with some people who don't think they're quite so good. So we need a way to be able to enable or disable that automation really simply, without touching a computer, without touching a phone, without having to turn something on or off within Home Assistant, or especially in Node Red. So I'm going to figure out how to make it work with the light switch in the boot room and the outside light. Now both my outside light and my boot room have Shelly 1s controlling them, which is how I'm able to do cool stuff like turn it off and on through here. But it also means that I've got a normal light switch which my partner wouldn't know was smart. However, it is, and I'm going to make that light switch enable or disable the automation while still maintaining its normal functionality to turn the light on or off. Let's have a go. So I'm going to drag on a event state node. I'm going to do this in a separate sequence, same flow, same canvas, different sequence. Now I'm going to say, first one I'm going to do it with is my boot room. So I'm going to look for boot room light. And I'm going to say, if this goes on for 0 minutes, and say boot room on, I'm then going to drag on one of these wait nodes. Now, so if that state is true, as in the light's been turned on through the normal switch, now I'm going to take the, again, boot room, light, state. Now this will give you a full drop down of stuff that you can choose from. So I'm just going to do, but I just want state. So if the state goes off, so I'm going to say boot room off. Now I'm going to say, well, I'm also going to have a timeout in there because I don't want it to sit there forever waiting. So I'm going to put in 500 milliseconds. I think that that's long enough to turn the light off and on, and that's going to enable or disable the automation. So just for demonstration, I'm going to drag on a debug node and a change node. Now, so if this goes true as well, as in we've turned the light on, we've waited again for it to be turned off, and that's true as well, then I'm going to change message payload to, let's say, boot room light. Let's call it boot room light toggle. Okay, and I'm going to take that payload and map it to here. So we've got it so we can turn the light on and off, and then it will put this message, hopefully, up in here. But I also want the opposite to be true. So I'm going to copy these and paste them down here. I'm going to make this boot room off. Change this to off. Boot room on. And boot room on. I'm going to map this straight up into the toggle as well. Now what we're expecting to see is this message here, boot room toggle, should be into the message payload, which means that it'll be mapped into this debug node, which means that it'll pop up here with any luck. Now I'm going to have to get out of my chair and go and test it. So hopefully you caught that. It ran this bottom line because the light started as on. I turned it off and then back on fairly quickly, and what it did is it went up this path here and sent the boot room light toggle through to here. And you can see that shows on at 8 o'clock and that shows at true at 8 o'clock as well. I think it's also important to understand what happened on the top path, because actually this triggered as well at 8 o'clock. But when we turned it on, now that was our second action, it did go along to this path, but this timed out. So because I didn't turn it off within that 500 milliseconds, because this wasn't met, this state going off never happened, it went to a timeout, 500 millisecond timeout, so it never completed that top path. Now that proved a point. It proved that we can toggle off and on and trigger something to happen, but that's not actually that useful. So what we're going to do now is we're going to drag these along here. I'm going to delete these wires. I'm going to change this change node, and I'm going to add another variable, or changing another variable. Now you remember I said on part 1 about message.payload and how that gets passed from node to node. Flow variables exist within that whole flow. Now our flow is demo, this whole canvas is a flow. So we can set, or you can have a global one which goes between flows. Now we're going to set a flow, and I'm going to call it BR automation. Now I'm going to set that to true or false, so I want it to be boolean. Now I'm going to set that to true. Now I'm going to say BR automation. I'm going to put this into my payload so I can see what's happening. True. And I'm going to say BR automation true. So I'm going to set up this boot room automation flow variable, and I'm going to set it to true. I'm also going to copy it and create one that is setting it to false. Again, changing my message payload so I can see it in my debug, and changing this one, which is actually going to change what's stored within that variable. If you're not sure what a variable is, it's just a thing. It's just something that you can assign a setting to. So, but now we know that these are going to send an action on, and we need to decide whether if it's true at the moment, we want to turn it false. i.e. if it's on, we want to turn it off. And if it's off at the moment, we want to turn it on. So I'm going to drag on this switch node. So out of these actions here, I'm going to use this switch node to make a decision. It's a decision node basically. Now by default it's going to be looking at the property message payload. So it's going to be looking at whatever's been passed from the previous node. And we don't want to look at that. We want to check to see the status of the flow variable BR automation. Now we want to be looking to see whether that's true or false. So we can say add this condition here. So is it true, or now you might be tempted to say is false, but what that's going to do, the first time it runs, we haven't set anything in that BR automation flow variable yet. So it's going to fail because it's not true or false. In fact, it's nothing, it's null. So we want to say, is it true or is it anything else? So is it true or otherwise, go to 2. And at least that way we're going to always set it the first time. So I'm going to say done. So we know that true is at the top. So is it true? If it's true, we want it to be false. If it's not true, we want it to be true. Now I'm also going to pass both of these into my message payload. And last but not least, I'm going to add an inject node. Why am I doing that? Because I don't want to get out of my seat again. So I'm going to pass that into this switch and I'm going to press deploy. So the theory is if I press this button, we should see that it goes true or false. Well, it's gone true. If I press it again, it's gone false. So that's simulating the action of me turning the light on and off, or off and on within that 500 milliseconds because of this timeout here. So that's going to go into this switch, check to see whether it's true or false, and then it's going to put it down either one of these paths, and we're going to come to this message payload just to check. There we go, we can do that all day. Now I'm going to do exactly the same for my outside light. Cool. So that worked as well. It's pretty good. So the very last thing. Now I promised you a wait node, which we've done. I promised you a comments node. Well, that was really easy. All you do is double click on it and write some comments. But it is useful. It is useful to put what the flow does and how it does it sometimes, because looking at that, it's a little bit baffling to start with. Now, I did suggest that I'd use a link in and a link out as well. Now we're also going to do something here, because if I disabled the automation, but that timer had already started running, that 5-minute delay, then it's still going to turn off, which is a bit annoying. So I'm going to do something else first. I'm going to take a change node and I'm going to call this reset. Now, if I change this from message.payload to message.reset and make that true, or boolean true, I can wire that into here, and I can test that with an inject node. Now what that should do, remember we got that little blue dot down there once we'd started the timer. So I can click this inject node, which is going to simulate the PIR starting. So it's got that blue timer here. If I look in my overview, I can see that my outside light is on, and I can see that my boot room light is on. And my boot room light should turn off. No, it won't turn off because I left it on to start with. But we can see this is about to turn off in 5 minutes. So I can press this inject node here, and it should reset. So you can see that now says reset here. But that's not that useful because we're going to have to come to node red to reset it every time. But this is where the link in and link out come in. So I'm going to take my link out, I'm going to put it down here. So if my automation is false, i.e. I've just turned it off, I'm going to wire this into here. Bear with me. I'm going to get a link in and wire that here and wire that to my reset. So it's a bit like an inject node, that's just going to pass into here. Now I'm going to need to link these two together, and I can do that like this. So why have I done that with a link in and a link out instead of just wiring straight from here up to there? Because it looks messy. But if I click off of there now, the invisible line disappears, but it's still there, it will still work. So I can now, let's have a look here first. Let's turn my outside light off, my boot room light off. So my OS automation is true, my light is off. So the theory goes, I can trigger my PIR. It's going to run and set off this 5-minute delay. Has it turned my lights on? Yes, it's turned the boot room light on, and it's turned my outside light on. That's turned off after 5 seconds, but I've decided I no longer want my automation to be running. I want to interrupt this 5-minute delay, so I toggle my switch off and on, or on and off. I'm going to simulate that by using this inject node. So that's now gone to false, and that little blue dot has gone away and it's gone to reset. Now then, we're done. Hopefully you're still with me. Hopefully you've taken something from this video. If you have, please give it a like. If you'd like to see more like this, please subscribe. If there's something you haven't seen or something you'd like me to clarify, please put a message in the comments and I'll be sure to come back to you. I might even do a special video for you for next time. Now, this might not be applicable for you. You might not have an outside space. You might not have all the things that I've got. But hopefully you've seen an example of how to use some of those nodes, specifically the change node, the switch node, the link in and out, maybe less so. They are quite handy for keeping it tidy, but you can do it without. And hopefully you'll watch my next video with Node Red Masterclass number 3. Thank you. I've been Simon from Homesite. See you next time.